everybody. Welcome to another episode of Embracing Wisdom with Stacie. That's me. And today's episode is more of your questions and my answers. So over last couple months, I've had a lot of people write to me asking a little bit more questions. They kind of are curious about some of the things in my life that I talk about a lot. And so I want to answer some of those questions. So the first question that I've answered in a roundabout way a few times comes from a person from my blog. I believe this question came is, why did I want to become a yoga teacher, and why specifically an adaptive yoga teacher? So I will answer this as succinctly as I can. I wanted to become a yoga teacher. Like many yoga teachers do, we fall in love with the practice. We feel inspired to share it with friends, family, strangers. And so we embark on this journey that typically starts with a 200-hour training. I kind of did it a little different. I went a roundabout way of getting my training done that was sort of a monkey on my back, honestly, for a long time. I didn't do a 200-hour training, which is sort of like the college degree of yoga teachers. I didn't do that. I dabbled in little tiny certificates, started teaching, and I always felt like I had that thing on my shoulder because people would often say, much like they do with colleges, who did you study with for your 200 hours? Where did you study your 200 hours? And I always felt like that was a burden that I wanted to overcome. And so I did eventually get my 200 hours. And since then, I've gone on to get my 500 hours. All that to say, I think I wanted to become a yoga teacher because I loved the practice so much that I wanted to share it with other people. And the truth really is I am very much an introvert. So being around a lot of people is hard for me. But yet, when I think for anybody, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, when you're passionate about something, it becomes very easy to overcome some of those maybe perceived obstacles or things like that. Like speaking in front of people is very easy for me if I'm talking about what I'm passionate about. Going to a dinner party and just social, nah, not so much. I wanted to become an adaptive yoga teacher because I really feel like in order to really embody the essence of yoga, which is union, to yoke together, there are pockets of people in different populations that don't have access to the practice. So I wanted to break down some of those barriers, things like obesity, age, disability, whether somebody is incarcerated or not, whether they have a mental illness or a physical disability. I wanted to eliminate those barriers for the time being and share the yoga practice with them because I feel like yogas can be expensive, right? It's $25 a class at a studio. Not everybody has $25 to spend on yoga. So that's a barrier. Finances is a barrier. Location is a barrier. Um, Ability is a barrier. And I just feel like if we're really going to live the principles of yoga, which, as I say a million times, is not just touching our toes, we have to be willing to embody everybody. Now, it becomes a little bit tricky when you're also trying to be self-sufficient businesswoman or businessman, entrepreneur. And that leads into question number two, which came from a viewer on YouTube. Is it hard to be a full-time yoga teacher? And how do you do your business? Something the question had to do with that. Yes, it's hard to be a full-time yoga teacher. It's incredibly hard. It is an incredible amount of outpouring of energy. My particular niche of yoga is also working with people with dementia and disabilities. So there's a lot of tragedy, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief, a lot of confusion, a lot. And so having a strong sense of self, having strong boundaries, not being an empath really lends itself for it to be successful for me. I don't take home, I don't carry, it doesn't weigh me down. The people who are struggling, who have lost so much or going through family dynamics of a traumatic brain injury, and there's a lot. that in itself is challenging. It is challenging to come up with creative material or to create sequences that are going to be inclusive to most bodies. That is hard. It gets easier over time. When I first began to become a yoga teacher, I wrote everything down and had little note cards. It's all, and then I let go of all of that and just dumped into my heart. And whatever comes out of my heart is exactly what is right for that particular class. So I have a theme for every month in which I am guided to teach by. The themes are generally looking at the philosophy and principles of yoga that get woven into a yoga practice. So, for example, coming up in September, we will be discovering the foundation of what sustains us, kind of rooting into the truth of us. What is going to keep us steady when life becomes challenging? How do we maintain our sense of self when we're faced with physical changes, aging, disability, surgeries, things like that? So that part gets easier. The logistics of being a yoga teacher gets easier. The hard part, which people I don't think necessarily know about any small business or any entrepreneur, is that it is 80%, I think, 80% marketing, reaching out, following up, invoicing, newsletters, social media, blog posts, videos. It's 80% of the non face-to-face work that is probably the hardest part for me. I'm very good at it. I'm very organized. I'm very systematic. It's hard in that it is time consuming. It takes up a lot of my time. I don't take days off. Every single day I do something for my business, but I also have pulled in other things to help supplement my business. So I peddle essential oils. You have a problem in your life that a natural solution can address. I'm going to help you find that natural solution, whether it's sleep or pain or mood or whatever. I also do a little side billing work for a doctor in town. I do her scanning and her shredding for her, just a little cash on the side. I make body butter and bath bombs. I make bread. I sell those things. So I have a lot of different little things that go into the wholeness of my business. But my number one, of course, is yoga. Number two is probably essential oils. And then it kind of just trickles down. But I'm always busy. I'm always doing something. For a lot of people who are used to a paycheck every 2 weeks or putting in a certain amount of hours per day, owning your own business, running your own business, being your own boss can be hard. You have to be organized, you have to be diligent, you have to be committed, you have to look at the big picture, and you have to have super thick skin, because people will say things to you and criticize you that in this world that we live in probably wouldn't say to my face, but it's really easy to do behind a screen. So you have to just let a lot of it go. Just let a lot of it go. I'm not going to please everybody, and I'm not here to please anybody except speak from my truth, from my heart. Okay, question number 3. How did I end up with the Chihuahua? Well, I'm a big dog girl. I love hiking. I love having a companion on the trail with me. And I also love any breed of dog that's got a smashed face. The flatter the face, the more I fall in love. And so I really wanted to have a Boston Terrier. I had one growing up. My mom had one growing up. It's like this generational thing. You have a Boston Terrier, have always had one. They're smashed, but they're also super hyper and super fun. And I looked online. The local shelter happened to have a Boston Terrier. So I raced down. The lady in front of me was in line for the Boston Terrier. It's kind of a thing. You either get it or you don't. So I was number 2 in line. And I thought, please, 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 maybe she won't like him. Well, she liked him. She adopted him. And so I was walking through and found this little 1-pound Chihuahua, and the rest is history. So I'm really a big dog person. But here's how I've come to love the little dog is that, you know how cats, and I have cats, so I have the freedom to say this, cats are so, they're just jerks. They're so, self-centered that they will only want you when they want you, and that's it. Whereas the small dog is happy to jump on your lap any time of day, will do it anytime you ask him to. He will jump on your lap. So he's like having the size of a cat, but the personality of a dog. And I like that because when I'm hanging out or crocheting in the winter, I like to have my little lap companion. And the cats just sort of, if they feel like it, they might let me pet them. So that's how I ended up with the Chihuahua. Okay, last question goes to the work that I do, kind of looping back. The question came is, do I have a personal experience with traumatic brain injuries or dementia? No, I do not. I do not. Through the course of my business, 17 years, I have met a tremendous amount of people who have then become personal to me. But I do not have a personal I don't have a personal. My oldest son has had multiple concussions, but I didn't even know that that impacted him as an adult until within the last few years when I started to really understand that those bumps on the head can be accumulative and they can cause impact far beyond the actual bump on the head. But I don't have anybody in my life personally that has dementia, any form of dementia. I don't have anybody in my life that has a traumatic brain injury that's not a student of mine. So the inspiration came somewhere in me. I just knew that these were my people. Love teaching yoga to any type of person, any disability, any barrier, but it's really, there's something in me that feels a tremendous amount of passion, compassion for people with neurological changes. I don't. I have a personal connection, as you know, to a person with disability, but I don't have a personal dementia or traumatic brain injury. Okay, one more question. This question is about the garden. This is about the garden. How much time per day do I spend in the garden? Choice or must? By choice, I spend maybe 15 minutes of my choice, 30 minutes talking to the plants, picking weeds, kind of enjoying it, loving it, watching it, talking to it, noticing changes, being excited. The must amount of time that I spend on my garden probably averages more like an hour a day. And that's the watering, the picking, the hoeing, the raking, the harvesting, the plucking, the pruning, the figuring out, moving stuff. I have this rogue raspberry bush that just took place in my yard this year. I don't want to move it while it's still growing, so I'm waiting for fall to come, freeze, it's out of here. I'm going to move it somewhere else. But that takes time. And so how do I run a business, support my adult with disabilities, get her to where she needs to be, sometimes drive 2 to 300 miles a day teaching yoga, cooking dinner. How do I do it? I'm organized, I'm diligent, I'm committed, and I'm great at time management. But having a garden is a lot of work. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of work. Some days I'm in the garden for 2 hours. And then other days, if I'm lucky and it rains, I'm not in there very long. So it is a lot of work, but it's a lot of lessons along the way. Like, I love the idea that we can put this tiny little thing in the ground. And now, as I look out there, that one little seed that I planted on a little tiny hill way back in May now has miles of vines and 3 spaghetti squashes growing. Like, that's amazing to me. One seed will feed me at least 3 times. Like, that's cool. And to think that with a little bit of love, a little bit of water, a little bit of sunshine, I can feed myself and I can create things, I can make things, I can harvest things. And it brings me joy more than anything. Like, I have this big batch of celery, never grown celery before in my life. I don't love celery. I like the flavor of it. I think it's good in soups and stews, but it's not like I'm going to walk around and chomp on celery. But I wanted to grow it. I find it fascinating. A friend of mine online was growing it last year, and I was like, I'm doing that. Well, now I have this humongous, humongous area of celery. What do I do with it all? So then learning how to harvest it, what to do with it. Do I freeze it? Do I dehydrate it? Do I puree it? What do I do with it? And so that fuels me. Learning something new fuels me. So the garden gives back to me more than just food. It gives me inspiration. It gives me the reminder that everything happens in its own time, and that this is my hang up every single spring. I plant the seeds and I'm waiting, and I'm certain after 2 weeks that something bad has happened, that they didn't grow, somebody stole them, I suck as a gardener, and lo and behold, they come when they're ready. And so that has taught me about just putting the seeds out there and trusting the process, trusting in the own time things will grow, things will show up, things will start to bloom. And that I apply to my daily life. I put it out there and I nurture it, an idea, a thought, a plan. I put it out there and I nurture it. It will produce in its own time. And that some things I have no control over, like where the squirrels decided to replant cucumbers and green beans this year. They're everywhere. That's okay. So the celery, I will be sharing soon, like how I harvested it, what I did with it, why I did what I did with it, and how I plan to use it over the winter. So those are the questions, fun questions. The Chihuahua's right here. Come here. He's 8 pounds of goodness. Here he is. He's not really a Chihuahua. He really is. He's a long-haired Chihuahua, but he doesn't have that nasty temper that most Chihuahuas have, where they're barky and bitey and ankle biters. He's not like that. He's just nothing but pure love. He's got like the love of a Great Dane in his 8-pound body, and he loves to come out here with me. If I say, "Do you want to come to work with Mama?" He runs out here. So he likes being out here. All right. That's what I got for you. I will see you next week. Keep the questions coming. I plan to do these sort of Q&As every couple of months or so. As I accumulate some questions, then we'll just go from there. So, all right, take care. If you're participating in the 30 days of yoga, we're down to the final week, which is exciting. It's been great. There'll be a prize just for the participation and fun factor of it.